chain area. And I should mention, we will be recording this session as you just got your pop-up, mostly for posterity's sake. And we're going to put this up on our website for folks that are unable to attend. But just a little bit of a quick overview of what we're doing here. So first of all, this is a tour of some of the current functionality as we have it built out for the procure to pay features of the Oracle or Aggie Enterprise solution, which is to say it is not intended to be training. There is plenty of training that will be coming your way. This is just a tour. It's a little teaser, taste, appetizer of what's out there, and hopefully can spark some feedback and some questions. You may see during these demonstrations that our team members have more access than might ultimately be available to yourselves when we go into production. That's normal. We're in a testing environment right now. There is no reason to take any notes. If you don't want to take any notes, this isn't training. You're not expected to learn how to use a system here. The goal of these demonstrations is to really start normalizing and socializing how the solution will work for you, for the campus. The idea is that we're going to do this every month, and we are actually really much encouraging the same audience to come back again. It's not meant to be a one-time event. We do have a very short survey that we're asking you to fill out at the end, and I think we'll throw it up in the chat as we get it further along. That just helps us know if we're sort of on the right track in how we're configuring this system. Last little bit, so please try to mute until you have questions to ask. What we're going to do is about 5 to 10 minutes of each area, starting with our supplier services section. And then as the end of their demo, we'll let you chime in and start asking questions. In the meantime, anything you want to throw into chat that is relevant to the area we're looking at right then, please throw it in a chat, and we will respond back as promptly as we can. If we miss anything throughout this demonstration, we'll try to catch those on our web or at our next meeting next month. I'm going to give the baton over to Crystal. I think, do you have any little housekeeping to update on, or did I cover everything?
I think you covered everything. I will be dropping the survey into the chat. We encourage you all to take the survey. It's real brief, and it just helps us get an idea of how we're doing with the presentations, and also how we're doing as far as what you're thinking, how you're feeling about the system itself and how it's coming along. So I'll put that in there in a few minutes, and go ahead, looking good.
Thank you. Last little footnote that I failed to mention. So I do want to remind everybody couple things. One, be nice, right? We're all on the same team here. We're all trying to put together the best solution possible for UC Davis. And two, this is a supply chain focused demonstration. So the procure to pay features, we do not govern the chart of accounts, which is going to be a whole other thing that you will be dealing with. But we just want to kind of try to keep those conversations where they in the right lanes. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Esther on our supplier services team, and she's going to be demonstrating some of the onboarding of suppliers.
Hi there, let me share my screen. Host disabled participant screen sharing. Let me enable that.
Crystal, are you considered the host on this one? Fix that.
Thank you. There we go. Sure. All right, screen okay, sure?
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. So first I'm going to show you guys how to search for suppliers. So go to the navigator, go onto procurement, and suppliers. And then go to the magnifying glass here. And you can just enter part of the name. You don't have to enter the full name. So we're going to do BWR. There's no wildcards, just hit enter, search, and 2 suppliers pop up. And I just wanted to show what the supplier record looks like compared to Koali. So let's go into this one, BWR Funding Incorporated. And you can see it's a little bit different than Koali is. It's not one big long page. There's information stored under these tabs here. So under profile details, In business classifications, you'll see this is where we capture insurance, W-9 forms, etc. Up here on the top in the profile section under addresses, you can see all the addresses associated with this record. Sites are related to addresses. They allow more detail for payment and
Esther?
contacts. Yes.
Esther, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're having a hard time hearing you. You
Oh.
sound really far away and
Oh, sure.
garbly. Sorry about that.
No, thank you. My audio is trying to, just one second. Turn up my audio just one moment. Tried to get a better mic, but I don't know if that worked very well. Audio. I can also talk louder. Is that better? Or am I still garbling?
Yeah, that's better. Just try to
Okay.
speak up as much as you
Okay,
can.
I will. Sorry about that. So anyway, this is where the addresses are located here. And then, like I was mentioning, sites, you can have more detail related to the addresses. Contacts, there's one contact for this record. And then qualifications, though, different thing. I haven't really touched on that yet. Also, I wanted to show another function of the search feature. If you know the vendor ID from Quali, you can enter that. If the supplier is active and has been used within the past 18 months, it will be converted over into Oracle. So you can enter that supplier ID from Quali, and you have BWR International supplier ID number, BWR International supplier ID number. So that's another search function that you can do. The next thing I wanted to touch on was the last town hall, and Dina showed what it was like to do self-service through the supplier portal. I was touching on that very, very briefly. So as the supplier can self-register through the self-service portal in Oracle, and they can enter their company information, any contacts. Oh, sorry, let me go back to the beginning here. This is what it looks like at the beginning. So they can enter their company information, tax information, their contact information. They have the ability to add another contact if they want through the self-service portal. They have the ability to add an address. And if they want to, they can add additional addresses. Then they have a questionnaire that they can fill out. And this questionnaire captures extra detail. This is where we would obtain the W-9 form from the supplier. This is where we would obtain conflict of interest. They can select their payment terms. They can update a certificate of insurance. So that information, this questionnaire captures a lot of information for us. And then at the end, the supplier has the option to review the registration that they submitted. Sorry, the registration that they entered. And they just click register. That request comes to supplier services, and we will approve it or deny it, hopefully approve. And once we approve it, the supplier has the ability to go ahead and create a user account, and they can update their information in the self-service portal. And I'll show what that looks like here. So I am logged in as John Smith, and I am the administrative contact for VWR funding. So I'm going to go in and show what it looks like if I, as VWR, the admin contact, want to update my record and add a new address. So I'm going to go in here into the supplier portal section and manage my profile. And you can see here all sorts of tabs to select what you want to do. I'm going to click edit. Making edits will create a change request for the profile. Do you want to continue? Yes. Like to add new address. And like I said, the supplier has the ability to change anything. They can change their corporate information, their financial information. They can update update their banking account info, business classifications. For instance, they would update, if they want to add a certificate of insurance or something like that. But in this instance, we're going to just update an address or add an address to my record. So click on actions, create, and I'm going to do another purchasing address. And Oracle lets you, if you know the zip code, it will populate the state and the city. It's California. And this address is going to be for ordering or remit to, and don't worry, the suppliers will receive instruction on how to fill this information out. They're not just going to go in blindly. They'll have screenshots and detailed instruction on how to update information or how to register. Add a phone number. Email. And that's it. So go ahead and add my address here. And I'm going to review my changes. See if there's, I don't think I changed anything else, but it gives you the option just to review what you changed in the record. So there's my address, that's the change. I'm going to submit it. And so they get a confirmation, profile change request 24002 is submitted for approval. I'm going to click OK. Done. And based on my correction, supplier services should receive a notification that the information was updated. So let's see here. Nope. But you can see it usually takes like a minute just based off of my connection. But you can see in the past. All notification. You can see in the past we've received requests for VWO funding, and it'll should look like this. Once the supplier has submitted an edit, it's going to look like that, and supplier services will go in, review, approve, or reject. And that's it.
All right, that was wonderful. Thank you, Esther.
Sorry about the audio issues. Apologize, new microphone and whatnot.
No worries. We appreciate you jumping in and showing this. Does anyone want to jump off of mute and ask any questions? Now's a great time about the supplier onboarding. There's been a couple in chat. Sounding like it's pretty solid. So the main question in the chat, just to remind everybody, is, oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody have a question?
Well, I asked a question in the chat, but it sounds like that was answered. But I also was wondering, you know, currently it takes about anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get a vendor added. Is that going to change somehow with the vendors adding themselves now, or is that about going to be about the same time frame?
And Dina, did you want to talk about that?
Well, that's going to be determined as we don't know how our process is timed out yet. We don't have that information. I think we do our best to try and get to everything as best as possible, but this is going to be a completely different way of doing suppliers. And we're hoping that with the suppliers adding, there won't be any back and forth that we need, so that we can just approve and hopefully be quicker at it.
Good morning.
Thank you.
I should also state that, yeah, I mean, as Anita was sort of mentioning, a lot of this will still be sort of fleshed out, but the general delay most of the time these days with adding a supplier is verifying their tax IDs and their tax information. And if they do self-service and they are able to attach that themselves, we'd expect that turnaround time to be 0. Effectively, we already have it. And I did want to mention, because it didn't really come up until just one of the questions in chat, modifying a supplier is different than adding a supplier. And we will have a path available through the ticketing solution for departments to request things such as a new billing address, which is one of the most common changes made. So that we'll take a look more of like submitting a online form where you're just requesting that the address be added, and you would supply backup showing, such as like an invoice from that supplier showing the new address. Esther, would you mind popping back up again and just taking a look at the vendor address section? Looks like Joey had a question in chat. Just wanted to see that again.
Sure, 1 second. Sure.
And then Jennifer was asking in chat about adding study participants. Yeah, so similar to the question about RSOs above, there will still be the ability for the departments to do the self-registration themselves, as long as they have the appropriate information and backup available to them. So you can either invite the study participant or the RSO entity to add themselves, or you can do it on their behalf if you have all the documentation.
So here are the addresses. I'll just click into one here. It's just the address. There's lots of ability to add information to it. You can tie a contact to that specific address. If you want to, I can even add one manually if I need to. It's as supplier services I can. Not everyone will have that ability, but once again, is there anything specifically that you wanted to look at, or just the address itself?
I'll leave that to Joy. She has anything specific you want to look at. She's writing in chat. It looks like there isn't an address on that first line. Not sure what that means. Looks like address. You mean
So
fake?
the first one right there,
This one?
it doesn't have like an address right there, does it?
Well, that is the address, 123 Fake Street.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that's the payee name. That's right.
Oh, okay, I could
Let me fix that.
barely see it,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, it's, I think it was entered incorrectly, but yeah, it should be. Good eye, good catch.
Yeah, open up 2 or 3. It might look more
Yeah,
representative of what
yeah.
they should look like.
Exactly here.
I see. Well, I'm
Funding
looking
is-
on that main screen right there
Yeah.
to select the address that I'd like to look at. So I see that first line, it didn't look like an address to me at first, so.
Sorry about that. That was
When you
just
go
a testing error, but this is more representative of how it should be. It will have a payee name, address line 1, possibly 2, city, state, postal code. So
Okay,
I'll go edit that other one. It was done when I was just doing testing for this, so.
okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Esther. Appreciate it.
So we'll go
And
fix it.
just to connect this module with some of
Mhm.
the other things you guys are going to see, right? So your sites, or that site, if you go to the sites tab there, Esther.
Sites.
Yeah,
Okay.
so essentially your site code or numbers, the PUR-2 is what you're going to see in like the procurement module where you create requisitions, what the invoicing team is going to see when they're creating invoices. So that's how a lot of this stuff is going to tie in terms of the site. There's a site to an address, there's a one-to-one relationship, and that's really how Oracle works.
So instead of a remittance address separately, there'll be purchase order address only, or?
So the way that we set up, and I guess we will go too down the rabbit hole, but right now the way that we have them set up is coming from Quali. If it's a procurement address, it's a PUR. But yeah, if it's only a remit to, will be a pay address.
Okay,
Dash, and that number is the address number from Quali. So we're trying to make that conversion as kind of seamless as possible. To try to hopefully those that remember what the Quali address is that we're using, that they can continue doing that in Oracle.
okay, thank you so much.
Great question. Okay. So Olga is actually asking specifically around conversion. So yes, to clarify, we are converting all of the active and open suppliers that are active defined as in they're doing activities in Quali within an 18-month window of when we go live. They're all going to be converted over to Oracle. Okay, I think at that we're at about 10:50. We'll shift a little bit now, and we're going to do sort of a tag team demonstration between the requisitioning piece, which Matt's going to run for us, and then jump over to the purchase order activity, which is Maura is going to show us that. So we'll hand the baton over to Matt.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt Zarnowski. I currently run our e-procurement system, Aggie Buy, but we won't be doing that when we move into Oracle. So today I'll show you what purchasing is going to look like in Oracle. In our last couple demonstrations, we've done some simple catalog ordering. Today we're going to do something slightly more complicated to give you guys a little more taste of what it'll be like to place some non-catalog orders in the system. So head over to our purchase requisitions here. So this is where our punch outs and our catalogs currently are, and that's where we've gone in previous demonstrations. But today we're going to go down to our forms where we can request things, and I'll let you know I see a lot more things in this forms area than most of you will see. You're not going to have all of these options. The two main options that people are going to have access to are going to be the quantity-based requisitions and the fixed price requisitions, as well as perhaps some of the agreements. And we can add different, even though these are different forms, we can add both of them into our cart at the same time, and we can go and then submit that cart. So that's what I'm going to do today. My goal today is to create a requisition that's going to simulate a repair, an ongoing repair order, like a 3-year repair agreement on a piece of equipment. So we've got a service line, and we've got an item line for parts, and it's going to be for like the next 3 years. And so I'll put that together, and then I'm going to submit that, and then Maura is going to take it on from there and show you what happens to it after you've submitted your requisition. So let's start this by putting in the fixed price, which is going to be our services. So this is service line for tractor repair. Ah, dang it, I had this the other day. All right. Accessories. Your category name, we're gonna do this for $50,000. My supplier here, you can just start typing into these fields and they should auto-complete if there is something in there that matches. So if you know what you're looking for, this should be fairly straightforward. And then I'm going to add that to my cart. So you fill out the basics here of what you're looking to get, add to your cart. And now from that, it's been added to my cart. And now I want to go back to that original purchase requisitions page, and I want to add a completely different type of line, right? If I wanted to do another fixed price line, I could do it from here, but I want to get back to the quantity line. So from this part, I'm going to hit done. It's going to take me out of this form, take me back to the main page for requisitions. And here I'm going to be able to go back to the quantity-based requisition. And here, this is going to be my parts for tractor maintenance. We're building this out 100 each. And again, the same supplier, because they're doing both parts of the maintenance. We're going to add that line to the cart. All right, so we've got two different lines of different types that we've added to our cart. We can see we've got 2 items in our cart. So now I can go to my cart to review. And I'm going to say that this is a 3-year PO for tractor maintenance. So I can put in my end date, 6/30/2025. Is that right? And so we've got our lines here. We can see what I've added, right? We've got the fixed price line, the quantity based line, and down here we've got our accounting. And I need to split this accounting because, I don't want it all in one fund. So I'm going to add a line down here. I'm going to hit the split line. And now it adds the same account, but I'm not using the same account. So I edit this to be the other account I want to use. It'll verify that that's a legit account. Yep, that's what I want. Oh, no, says it's not. Thanks, Oracle. Who's been following along? What did I do wrong?
Your department is blank.
What went wrong here?
That's great. It's a good demonstration because getting that chart string right is tricky.
That was it. I'm aiming for verisimilitude here.
While you were talking, it was deleting.
Okay, so now it looks like I have two different accounts here. At this point, I'm going to save to make sure. No, wait, I got an error and it went away. Oh, my percent. I don't have a percent split. Is that the problem?
Just pick like line 1.
Oh, wait, I'm not down here. Sorry.
Yeah. at the
It
bottom.
moved me. Dang it. All right, here we go. I need to actually do a split. There we go. So now we've got a 50-50 split on different accounts, adds up to a total of 100%. That's more like what we're looking for. Now I should be able to save, not get any errors. So at this point, it is ready to submit. So I'm going to go ahead and submit my requisition. All right, it's been successfully submitted. And now if I go back, if I go into the pending approval here. Oh, okay, well, this is also a good lesson. I don't know if this is going to, how this is going to work in production, right? We're not in production yet. This is a test environment. But yes, there is, in the test environment right now, there can be a significant delay between when you submit something and when it actively can be viewed in workflow. That can sometimes be 5 to 10 minutes later. Sometimes it's very quick, but sometimes you end up with this and it looks like it's not in the approval process yet. So I'm hoping production environment is slightly faster in that sense, but I can't say it will be.
Hi, Matthew. This is Maria with UC Co-op.
Hi.
And I just wanted to share that it is a pretty quick process. We actually are using that same system for the county side. And it does run pretty smoothly to where it pretty quickly you'll get an email saying that you have something to approve. So I just wanted to share that with you.
All right, so we can look forward to a smoother process. You can see here now it has shown up in workflow, so it has gone off for the fiscal approvers for both of the accounts. You can see that here. You see the fiscal officer approval. You see fiscal officer approval for the accounts. This is the part where I tell you, unfortunately, in order to support the fiscal officer approval that Davis uses, we've had to configure Oracle in a way that makes it not able to show you who the individual is for your fiscal account or your project if you're doing a project. That information will have to be accessed via a website, and that process is still being worked out. It can tell you it's here for fiscal approval, but unfortunately within the Oracle system itself, you won't be able to tell what individual is waiting for that fiscal approval. But that's where we are now, and this is exactly the page you would go to if you wanted to see, hey, where is my requisition and who is it waiting for? And after that, after approval, it heads on and it would hit Maura, who I believe is going to take the next step. But if there are other questions about this right now, I can answer these.
There are a few questions in chat, which I thought maybe we should pause for a second and take a look at those. So first one was around, would you split fiscal years? I don't believe you will have the ability to control the fiscal year that it is posting into. Maybe Eddie or Matt, you could confirm that.
I'm not aware that that's an option, Eddie.
That's correct. Yeah, there's no splitting on fiscal years.
So that's one question. Was the split just for line 1 on the requisition?
All right, who's the smarty? Who said that? Somebody else, somebody knows what they're doing here. Yes, I, in fact, only split the accounts on one line because I was trying to keep this fairly straightforward. You've shown me up. There you go.
And of course, you have the ability to choose if you are splitting one or each line you have to go through and do, but you certainly could just split one, which is what Matt did. And then Randy's asking, so there are no triggers of forms needed or that it will be routed to contracting services. And I believe that is correct. I don't believe there are any pop-ups of any backup that is required on a requisition during the process.
That is correct. I was going to actually, I meant to show an attachment and I did not today, but there is no requirement for that.
So we could, if we wanted to circle back later and we had some time, we could definitely dive into some of the attachment stuff. But no, there are no pop-ups that you're going to get similar to Koali. Those were all very heavily customized in the Koali platform and are not available here. Those business rules.
One thing that we did add is when you are creating a requisition, there is a link to the form so that you don't have to go out and search the website. It'll take you right there, but it's not going to be just a pop-up saying.
Maybe we'll let Matt bring that up. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so this again, this is the test environment. This is not what it's going to look like necessarily by the time we get to production, but this is what Mike's talking about. These will be the links to where you can get the forms that are required.
Okay, so let's switch over to the PO side of this and let Maura show us that.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Maura McLaughlin. I'm a life sciences buyer, and Matt was purchasing tractor equipment, and so I figured the most appropriate screensaver would be an adorable sheep who's on a farm that we're buying tractor equipment for. So I'm just going to say hi, but now I'm going to disappear because I utilize my laptop as my keyboard. So I'm just going to fade away. And let me share my screen. And let me first sort of manage expectations here. I'm not exactly going to go through a PO step by step because I assume most of you won't actually be working in the PO world, but I am going to show you some functionality and some customizations that I utilize, which I think make me more efficient, and I'm hoping that you'll find them useful to you as well. So let me share my screen. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. What you might first notice is that this is called a springboard, looks a little different from Matt's or from Esther's, and that's because I have customized this particular view to be specific to what I'm going to be working in regularly. Now, the cool thing about Oracle that I find is that there's redundancies, but it's in a redundancy in a good way. All of this information is also contained over here in this navigation that Matt utilized, but because I'm a visual person, I prefer to utilize this tile icon to be able to access purchase orders. But just so you know, information is the same here as it is here, and you just have a choice in terms of how you want to access it. Just a quick how-to on how did I customize this springboard. I just went over here to this gear, and it pops, when you hover over something, it will automatically tell you what you're looking at. So I'm going to click on the customize my springboard, and now I have all the options for which tiles I want to see or not see. And again, I tend to prefer a more pared down view. So I have deselected a number of these tiles to be able to get to this view. Before I go into an actual purchase order, let me just point out a couple of things here again on this springboard page. You always have your home icon. I can also quickly go into any favorites or recent items. The one thing I love about Oracle, of course, is everything is a hyperlink, so it's just a click away. And this favorites is a cool feature as well, because not only can I favorite a particular work area, purchase orders, requisitions, purchase agreements, but I can actually favorite a specific document. I can even favorite a document that I am in the middle of editing, which I find is kind of cool because, especially if I get pulled away into something else, I can simply favorite that document and I can come back to it later very quickly. here is where, of course, I will be living a lot. This is in the notifications bell, and you'll see that it has a little number here. It's just like the number on your cell phone for text messages or missed calls. It tells you in real time what you need to take action on. So it's kind of a quick. This view is a quick hit. I'll show you in a moment where there are more details, as this button indicates. So this, of course, is just notification that there's something landed on my action list that I need to address. I can look at, of course, just the most recent or pending notifications. Pending is because I simply haven't clicked on it to investigate what it is I need to take action on. Or I can look at all of my notifications, and that expands the view. And of course, I can load, many more items onto this particular list. But since I don't want to necessarily go into one particular actionable item, I'm going to click on this more details so that I have a greater view of my task list, and I have more customization of its views, and to be able to help me in utilizing utilizing the information to help me to do what I need to do. So you see here, of course, you've got your left-hand nav. I love the fact that I can just make it go away by pinning or unpinning it. There's great customizations in terms of the view. I can move columns around. These are pre-programmed views, but I can actually create my own view with my own specific parameters. I have
Maura,
yeah.
Are you moving your screen? Are you moving your mouse right now?
I not at this exact moment, but now
Nothing's moving.
I'm sorry. Okay, let's
You may have
see.
a pop-up window open there.
I
That's
do,
not being
sorry, the
shared.
pop-up. Yep, sorry, my bad. Let's get the let me get to the pop-up. Sorry about that. Where's my pop-up? There it is. Okay, sorry. Here we go. Pop-up. Now you see my task list, or the pop-up window.
Yep,
that
perfect.
the views. Yes, sorry about that. So what I was saying is that with this pop-up view of my task list, I have greater customization, greater flexibility to sort of slice and dice the information as I want to see it and work with it. On the left-hand side, I've got this navigation. These are pre-programmed views. I can potentially actually customize and create my own view. I can simply make this navigation appear or go away by pinning it or unpinning it. I have visual icons that when I hover over them, they tell me if something is assigned. I'll show you in a moment where you get some other options for icons that will show me different information. When I expand, so depending on the parameters that I choose here, I'll either get a streamlined list, or I'll get sort of the full, the full Monty here with all of these actionable items. And the icon for assigned, something that's basically in progress, is a clipboard with some writing on it. I also have an icon for withdrawn and icons for completed. Now, if I want to take my task list and further utilize the further slice and dice the information, I can just simply click on this export to Excel, and that way I'll have even greater, and you probably won't see this because again, we have a pop-up window. Let's see, do you see the My Tasks in Excel?
Not in Excel.
Let's see, do you see?
Just the same window you had before.
So you see Excel?
No.
Nope, sorry, my bad. Okay, let's do this.
And I think this is probably a really great overview of some of the options there. I don't want to miss the opportunity if you had anything in the actual PO to show the folks.
Sure, absolutely.
Just because we are getting a little bit on time.
Oh, okay, no problem. So let's go quickly into purchase orders. I just wanted to show you that I have this dashboard.
And you will need to reshare.
Thank you for the reminder. Bear with me one sec. Where did my, oh, here we go, excuse me. Let's go back to share. Okay, can you see? This is the dashboard. When I choose purchase orders, I can, of course, as Matt was saying, there was a particular issue with some of the fields in one of the requisitions he was working in. If I'm working in a PO, and can you see this? I want to make sure you can still see my screen.
Yes, looks okay.
Okay. I can immediately know what the problem is by looking at this incomplete, this exclamation point error. It'll tell me very specifically what are the fields that are required but are missing information in this PO such that it was not approved, did not move forward in the approval process. I can export this brief list into Excel, which makes it easier because as this is a pop-up window in this particular screen only, I want to have the information at my fingertips rather than having to keep continuing to come back to this this screen. There's a hyperlink to the requisition that Matt created. I can easily, as I was mentioning, I can favorite this particular PO if I want to come back to it. This is something that Matt talked about, is also the notes and attachments section. Let me just go into edit mode and show you how easy it is to simply click a plus. It's going to scroll, bear with Oracle. I have the option to, here in the notes and attachments section, is simply add an attachment by clicking on the plus sign. The cool thing is that it accepts these file text and URLs. I can also customize if it's an attachment that's just to the purchase order, or if I want an additional individual to be able to see the attachment. I can slowly, it will close. I also can include notes to the supplier, and this information will actually appear on the PO, important information like delivery scenarios once the product is, arrives at campus. Another functionality that I like here is within the, there's a tremendous amount of data here. There's a lot of columns. I don't necessarily want to go in and edit the columns. That's a little more cumbersome than this option, which is to simply reorder columns so that I have the particular data that I want to be looking at sort of right in front of me within my field of view. So I just simply reorder by selecting and moving the particular header, the column header. One other thing I wanted to show you is that you have this great quick search on the side. So what if I'm working in a PO and my boss calls and says, hey, let's talk about that, or take a look at that particular PO, whatever. So I'm going to start typing in, and as Matt was also mentioning, that once you start typing in, it'll automatically say, oh, are you looking for one of these POs? And no, I'm going to look for, make sure I count the number of zeros. I want to look for something in the 400 series. So just simply keep typing numbers and it'll bring up POs. I want to actually go into 445. And as you see, it creates a new side-by-side tab, which I really like because then I can toggle back and forth between, I actually could have shown you the rec, but I can toggle back and forth between the documents very easily. In case I also want to look at something quickly, here's another recent hyperlink list of the recent documents that I've been working in. How am I doing on time? And
we are way over, but it's actually really enjoyable watching all these kind of neat tricks and features that you've uncovered. So I was sort of just letting you go with this because I think there's some value here.
I don't want to take any more time. Why don't I just wrap it up? I was going to potentially show folks. Also, I'll just show you, this is a particular, this is a reporting icon, which again, should I need to access information that's in a either canned or custom report, I can click here, which is to browse the catalog of all the reports that are potentially available, or specific reports for procurement. And that's about it.
That's great. Wow, thank you very much, Maura. That was wonderful. In fact, some of our own team members were chatting about how they didn't know some of these tricks.
There you go.
Oracle, as you can see, is a very robust software package. There are 100 different ways to get to where you want to get to and view your data. So everybody's going to have a lot of latitude to come up with their own tips and tricks, but it's evidence from right there. It's really important to experiment and poke around. It's hard to break things. You can just kind of click around and see what works for you. Any audible questions we want to jump on and say anything out loud about the PO or any of those lookups before we move on to invoicing? Okay, we're going to move on. So what do we have next? So Natalie, I think, is going to be showing us some of the invoicing process around how they get entered, and then probably more importantly, as well as with Susan, around how we look things up maybe and do some inquiries, because that's really the departmental view of a lot of the invoicing piece. So Natalie, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, I'm Natalie Avina. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay. I am accounts payable analyst at supply chain management, and today I'm going to just demonstrate how we review invoices or try to find them that have been submitted to invoicing. So let me share my screen. Okay, so this is what the invoicing screen will look like. You'll go into invoices, and this is to search for invoices if you're wanting to check any kind of payment status or if it's been received. You'll go to this little notepad over here, click on it, and click on Manage Invoices. So in this screen, we're gonna kind of look up different ways you can search, but we're gonna do a purchase order. If you have the invoice number, you would type that in here. If you're wanting to search how many invoices are on a specific PO, you would put the PO number in, and that could populate, 10 payments or multiple payments on a purchase order. If you have this supplier number, you can search by that to see different invoices that we've paid to the supplier. Today, I'm going to go by invoice number, and I'm going to type in 100. And then search. And this will populate a list of all invoices in the system that include 100. So make sure you review which one you want to look at. Today, we're going to look at this invoice. And this screen opens. Use all the hyperlinks if you want to review the lines. You can click on the lines to see what was paid. Under payments, you can see that it was paid Wells Fargo, the paid amount. You can also click on this hyperlink to show more payment details, which I'll have Susan go over. We can also, let's look up multiple invoices on a PO. So you go back to your notepad, your manage invoices, and we're going to look up invoices against a certain purchase order. So you'll advance search to purchase order. We're going to type in one that we've used before. And then you can see on this PO, we have all these credit memos and invoices against this specific purchase order. You can open them to review. You'll see all the supplier information at the top. You can review your lines. And you'll mainly want to know if it's paid, and you'll would search in the payments. And that's how you would search for invoices.
We don't happen to have any that were paid in the test environment, do we?
Yes, the one I opened, the 103 was paid. So we can go back there. And here's the payment number right here. This is what I was gonna let Susan review on payment.
Very good.
But-
Well, we can
Yep.
wait, pause on that for a moment.
Yeah, so you can see your paid amount, your invoice amount, your status right here. And it went by check, Wells Fargo check. If it went Payment Plus or Paymodex or a different payment route, then or method, it would be right there.
All right, there were a couple questions in the chat, if you wouldn't mind hopping back to the search. One about, can you use a wildcard while searching within the manage invoices?
Yeah, I
A
responded to
what?
that one, but it'll be good to check, Natalie. I'm not sure if you guys have played around with it. I know we can
Okay.
change from starts with to contains, which
Yeah,
essentially would act as a wildcard, but I don't know that you guys have actually tried to use the wildcard and whether that works or not.
I don't think we've used a wild card.
Okay. But again, it contains would essentially act in the same manner.
Right,
But maybe you
so
want to
you
show how
can-
to do that. Yeah.
Like an advanced search, you can change any of these fields to narrow down your search. One that I did earlier was, let's see, I was looking up Cisco and it didn't populate. So if you search and do an advanced search, it'll bring up, it's actually Cisco Sacramento. So then you can click on this one and it will populate your supplier number as well. Does that answer the question? Under advanced search, these can all be
Click on
changed.
invoice number where it says starts with, yeah, and there you go, and show that right there. There you go.
Okay,
Yeah, or in fact, I think more the contains sort of
Yeah,
what they were
like you
getting
could
at,
do.
the wild card. There you go. So that's going to come back with anything that includes 100 in either direction.
Right.
yes.
So it implies the wild cards.
Well, I had Cisco in there, so it's anything with 100 and Cisco.
Okay, Natalie, do you have anything else you want to show?
That was all we were showing today, was how to search your invoices.
Excellent.
Mhm.
Questions on searching invoices that we didn't cover already? And I had chat. Looks good. All right. Did we want to switch over and look at a little bit more on the disbursement side? Or did we sort of cover all that already?
For payments, I mean. for
Well, we had Susan
invoices?
to do a little disbursements.
Okay,
If
Yeah.
you are willing and able.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Susan Clark. I'm working supply chain management. I'm the accounts payable disbursements lead. I work with two other team members. Their names are Kim Fine and Pao Zong. Our primary responsibilities are to make sure that we get our checks printed every day and out in the mail to our vendors, that we reissue lost checks, we cancel payments that may have been issued in error, and just overall help research payments, whereas vendors have questions or departments have questions, just help facilitate that process. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. Can everybody see my screen?
Thumbs up.
Perfect. Okay, so first off, for payments, as Natalie said, you can always drill down from an invoice to look at the payment information. But if you just want to go and look for a payment for a particular vendor, you would click on your payments tab. And then I think from the right-hand side over here, these two little icons on the right-hand side, you click on tasks. And then from this list, you're going to click on manage payments. And then you will see kind of like a search criteria fields that you can utilize to find the payment you're looking for. Right now, we're going to go ahead and look for a payment by vendor name or supplier name. So you would enter your supplier name into this field right here. Click on search that's on the right-hand side of the screen. And it's going to display everything that's been paid to this vendor. And summary wise, you're going to see the payment number, the payment document. Those are more internal. Payment status, we'll go over that in a minute. Of course, the payee name. The payment date's important, payment amount, and then remit to address. So let's say your vendor called you and they have not gotten their payment for $1,000. So let's go ahead and take a look at that payment in a little more detail. You can look at the details here. Invoices associated with that payment would be here. You can also drill down on that. There's a couple more tabs we haven't gotten into yet, so I'm just going to kind of stick to the details here. The area that you want to kind of look at is the status of the payment. Negotiable means that the payment was issued. The date it was issued was on February 9th, and it's been mailed out to the vendor. So if the vendor is stating that they haven't gotten the payment, you're going to want to follow the protocol for processing a stop payment so we can reissue that to the vendor. If the payment status was reconciled, that means that the vendor has already deposited the payment and it has cleared our bank account. If the vendor still cannot find their record, we could always get a copy of the check, but this is kind of where you're going to go to find that information. Okay. The other way you can look up a payment, sometimes you may already know what the payment number is. So you can search by payment number. Again, you're gonna want to click your search button on the right-hand side.
And Susan, one question that popped up in chat was, how do you know the PO number? So maybe as you're digging around, if you want to highlight that in one of the views.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Sure. So when you search by just a payment number, you're only going to see that one payment, whereas before we've seen a list of payments that were paid to that vendor. And some folks know what the payment is and they want to go right to it. And again, you're going to want to look at the payment status, payment date, and that'll determine whether you need to place a stop payment or whatever. Now, as far as the PO is concerned, if you were to look, let's see here. I don't know if you could drill down a little bit. Eddie, maybe you can help me a little bit on that.
I'm sorry, what was the question in there, Susan?
They're looking to see where the PO is in the payment details. Let's see if it's down here.
This assumes this payment was against a PO.
Right, so I don't think it would be on the payment, right? You would have to go back on the invoice.
Yeah,
and then
because
the invoice should show you the PO.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a non-PO. So
right.
So in any case, primarily what you're looking for is whether a vendor's a check has paid. Typically, your vendors reached out to you and they just do not know where the payment is. Other ways you can search, there's an advanced search function in the payment module that you can click on. If you're just you weren't given enough information by the vendor, but you kind of maybe you know what dates to look between, you can enter the criteria and search for a date range. In any case, you have all of these options and then some options over here. But you always also have just this basic search. Most searches will be by supplier name. some people will all know the payment number, but I would suspect that supplier name would be the primary way to search. So that's about all I have for today. Does anybody have any questions?
Susan, I just want to mention one thing real quick. So the payment number, if it's a check, is the actual check number.
Yes.
Just to clarify that.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
And then
is.
from that page right there, Susan, can you click on the paid invoices link?
Sure.
Well, that, I'm just curious, that would allow that drill down,
Yes. So you can get
right? So this is how you'd go back to see the corresponding either purchase order or if it was a non-PO payment. I believe you would see that here. So the purchase order information right there in the middle of the screen would be filled out had this been against a PO.
Yeah. Perfect. Any
All
other-
right. Well, yes, there was a long question by Tracy in chat. All right. So for the payment status, the term negotiable seems to be an odd terminology for indicating a check was issued. Fair.
Yes.
That is Oracle terminology. Is there a quick reference guide either within the Oracle app or elsewhere? I'm not sure in this particular context if that word has been identified as one that would need a translation. I think that just will get picked up over time as people start to learn the nomenclature.
Yeah.
Yeah, and once it's been actually cashed at the bank, the status will change to reconciled. And so that means our cash management team has also reconciled the bank statement with that check on there. So that will change to
Yeah.
reconciled. Instead
And
of
just-
into that, yeah.
And just to give a plug to our website, we do have our website where we have all sorts of good information, but you could go to payments, scroll down to forms. And here we have stop payment form. You can request a copy of the check along with, quite a few other items. So just kind of a good plug for our website there. And that's all I have. Does anybody else have any more questions or?
That was great. So I think we were still kind of talking about that save, but not gonna worry about that one. Yeah. So that was everything that was in chat. Does anyone want to jump off and ask any questions about looking things up, invoice payment sign? Or questions about the invoicing process?
I do have a couple direct messages that I got, and I'll share with the group, not necessarily who it came from, but just the questions that I was getting. So one not related necessarily to invoicing, but related to the project as a whole. The UAT phase, so user acceptance testing. There will be a period of time where users will be coming into the system. That is scheduled. I always forget the time frame, but I believe it's around the September time frame. So I think September, October might be UAT. And then I also received a question about DVs and who's going to be entering those in future state, or when we're going to demo how to enter those. So in future state, only Central AP is going to be able to enter invoices into Oracle. The new terminology for a DV is really a non-PO invoice. And then we hope that next demo will be able to show you the process that we're setting up to be able to submit requests to our Central AP team to be able to enter those into Oracle. So it's not going to be quite a ServiceNow ticket. We're looking we have created a fillable PDF form that is going to be sent directly into Oracle and create the invoice to expedite that process. And then our AP team is going to finish it up. But more details to come on that, hopefully next month. So hopefully you guys come back for that one.
Thanks, Eddie. All right, so if there are no other questions on the invoicing or payment information, wait, I did see, okay, I did get a direct message about all invoices being entered centrally. I think you did hear that correctly. Those was asking me. Invoices are entered by the AP team within supply chain. Most invoices will come directly from suppliers through our emailing intake system. And then the non-PO invoices will be coming in, as Eddie just mentioned, through the ticketing solution or our online form that we're going to have that will be able to submit a PDF directly to our email intake. And that is for all invoices that get processed out that are not coming in through a feed. So if you don't already have an existing Boundary app. Okay, Invoices, fun stuff. Jim's going to say a few words about our website and some of our training updates that we have coming on down the pipe.
Great. Thanks, Mike. And thanks everyone for all the good questions today. And actually, it was going to be part of my spiel today is just talking a little bit about where I'm getting all the information for the training. So I've been working really closely with all of our subject matter experts, first of all. So we have so many subject matter experts within supply chain management and also within finance and business. Also, I've been attending the various testing sessions, working closely with our system testers in terms of content for our training, our help pages, our informational website, as well as the Aggie Enterprise change and communications and training team. So I feel really lucky to be involved with this project and all these intelligent folks. And I try to each day approach my job as a sponge. So I'm trying to soak up as much as I can and then work on disseminating it to all of you. So currently we're working on the online training. Again, we will have online training for procurement, basically a background on all those cool features that Matt and Maura were showing you earlier. We'll have a tutorial on that. We'll also have online training for both catalog and non-catalog purchasing. So whether you're going to be purchasing from our catalogs or using the non-catalogs, like some of the features that Matt was showing you today, we'll have training on that. Also, I'm working on help pages specifically for supplier management. I'm going to talk about that whole process that you saw this morning a little bit. Also purchasing, accounts payable, also information on reports. We've been hearing from folks that they want to hear more about reports. And as the reports get more refined and developed, we will have information on those in future demo sessions, but also we will have training sessions on those. So that's the good news. The even better news is I do have a current web page available for all of you that you can check out if you'd like, that has information in general about all the processes that will be changing as a result of Aggie Enterprise. So take a look at the web page that I have in the chat session there. That will give you some good information about some of the processes that are changing, as well as some of the processes that aren't changing. So we often focus so much just on what's changing, but it's also important for people to know what's not changing. And then today, too, a good example of one of the things I'll be working on is an online glossary. So several of you mentioned like the word negotiable and different terms that maybe we don't currently use in the Koali world. The good news is we will have an online glossary. So again, as you know, people encounter these terms that they don't understand or that I don't understand in some cases, we'll be sure to include a glossary out there. And then last, but certainly not least, we want your feedback. So Crystal has put the link to our demo survey in the chat. This is very important because we want to know if these demonstrations are meeting your needs. So if there are things you liked about today's session, we'd love to hear good stuff like that. But also, if there are things that you'd like us to include in a future session, maybe things that we haven't thought about yet, maybe questions you have or that your fellow colleagues have, please take a minute to fill out that survey because it really does help us in terms of forming how we want to take these future demonstrations, as well as some of our online resources. So it benefits all of us. I guarantee you the questions you have are not only questions you have, but a lot of other people have as well. So thank you very much.
That was great, Jim. Thank you. Appreciate that. And we appreciate you all being here. I mean, you know, I think if I can get, you know, one goal accomplished in the next 8 months here, it's that none of these things that we are changing should be a surprise to anyone on campus. We want to make sure you are aware of them. We can't always make all the processes perfect. A lot of hands are tied to the system. Quite frankly, as Maura was highlighting, and as we dive more into the invoicing side, there's a lot of big benefits of this system as well. Some real efficiency gains. It's different, it's change. We just don't want anything to be a surprise, and we can knock that one out with these demos. So tell your friends for the next one. We do have a little more time. If there are other questions, we have basically the room until noon, although we don't need to go that long if everything's run out. So I see one other question there in chat. What will the turnaround in paying invoices? I assume that the time to pay as quickly as we can. Definitely our expected turnaround time. That's going to be a bit of a moving target, obviously, as we learn the new system and as we adapt with our suppliers. This new system actually has built into it what's called IDR, or it's an imaging solution that will intake our invoices for us and decode quite a bit of the information and load the shell of the invoice documents. So in some ways, although our team will be taking on more work by having to enter the non-PO invoices, we will also be learning and improving our processes with this new imaging solution. So we think it will balance out in the end, and we'll be able to get things out of here pretty quick. So question from Lorraine here. So if invoices are rejected, will we get an email or just have to see the status of rejected and approved invoices? Well, rejected is sort of an interesting word. I don't know that anything is going to be straight up rejected by Oracle. I think it will go into a hold process where an invoice processor will have to review why the system could not process the invoice, at which time it will come down to sort of our ultimately fleshed out business processes of how we communicate that back to whomever had requested the invoice. But I think in many cases, there will be communication back to the requester if the invoice cannot be processed. All right, you are free to take yourself off mute and jabber in here if you want. And I will take the diminishing participant count as a good indicator that we are just about ready to wrap up. So I just want to thank you all again for coming. I hope to see many of you again next month at our next demo. Have a great day. And thank you, team, for all your presentations.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.